The blood came first.
Vitals are stable.
Three
Proceed with
times
the
this
infusion.
week.
Understood.
3
Administering
mornings
now.
standing over
Monitor
the
for
bathroom
any
sink
anomalies
in her
on the
father's
EEG.
house on
Will do.
Beacon Hill, watching pink water spiral down the drain. The toothpaste tube sat on the porcelain edge. Colgate Total recommended by 9 out of 10 dentists, and Elena Woolstone wondered which dentist was the honest one. She was
We have to be
18 years
careful.
old.
It's
Her gums
unpredictable.
should not
But
bleed like
progress
this.
requires risk.
The
At
mirror
what
showed her
cost?
what
It's
she already
controlled.
knew.
Is it?
Dark hair pulled back too tight, eyes that hadn't slept well in months. The slight resemblance to her mother that made her father look away during breakfast. Margaret Woolston had died 10 days after Elena's birth. Complications. That was the word they used. As if death were merely a difficult math problem that hadn't been properly solved. Elena rinsed her mouth, spat. The water ran clear now, but the metallic taste remained. She had read somewhere, one of those late-night internet rabbit holes that swallowed hours without permission, that medieval toothpaste was made from crushed animal bones, burnt shells, wood ash, salt, and charcoal. Sometimes powdered brick if you were particularly ambitious about dental hygiene. The people of the 13th century rubbed this gritty mixture directly onto their teeth using their fingers, rough cloth, or what historians politely termed optimism. It destroyed tooth enamel within 6 months. They knew this. Historical records showed complaints about sensitivity, bleeding pain, and yet they continued. Because rotting teeth meant infection, and infection meant death, and a little daily suffering seemed preferable to the alternative. Modern toothpaste Elena had discovered used silica, ground quartz, essentially sand milled to microscopic fineness. The abrasive principle remained unchanged. 800 years of scientific progress, and the best solution was still scrape your teeth with something hard and hope the damage happens slowly enough that you die of something else first. The tube claimed to offer advanced whitening and enamel protection. Both statements were technically true. Both were also lies. Elena picked up her phone, 6:47 a.m. The house was quiet except for the old radiators ticking as they cooled. Her father would be in his study already, surrounded by books on moral philosophy, preparing for his 9 o'clock seminar at MIT. Her stepmother, Vivian, wouldn't surface until 9, moving through the kitchen with the silent efficiency of someone who had perfected the art of coexistence without connection. There was a folder on Elena's desk. MIT acceptance letter, full scholarship, computer science and literature, dual major. She was supposed to start in September. 3 months away. She was supposed to be excited. Instead, she felt like someone standing at the edge of a pool, knowing the water was cold, knowing the jump was inevitable, unable to make her body move. The blood in the sink had reminded her of something her mother wrote. Elena kept the journal in her nightstand's second drawer underneath sweaters she never wore. Margaret Woolstone's handwriting was precise, almost architectural. The entries were dated but sparse, more thought experiment than diary. One passage dated 2 weeks before Elena's birth: creation is curse. The moment you make something, you become responsible for its existence. It will outlive you or it won't. If it dies, you failed. If it survives without you, and that might be worse. But I cannot stop. The urge to create is stronger than the fear of what creation costs. Elena had read that passage so many times the page had developed a faint thumb-shaped stain in the margin. Her mother had been writing about a book, a feminist treatise called The Vindication of Motherhood, arguing that women weren't naturally weaker, just systematically denied education resources agency. It had sold 14,000 copies before Margaret died. It was still taught in universities. Her mother had created something that outlived her, and it had cost everything. Elena dried her face with a towel that was too expensive to feel comfortable. Everything in this house was too expensive, too carefully curated. Her father, William Godwin Thorne, taught philosophy and believed deeply in living according to principles. The principle of aesthetic restraint, the principle of intellectual honesty, the principle that grief should be private and processed through reason rather than emotion. He had remarried when Elena was 7. Vivian was an attorney specializing in environmental law. She was competent, cool, and treated Elena with the careful politeness of someone managing a client they hadn't chosen. Not cruel, just absent. Present in body, absent in interest. Elena had spent most of her childhood in libraries and her own head. She checked her phone again. 6:52 a.m. There was a notification. Email from someone named Dorian Ashford. Subject line: RE glass that heals itself. She had sent that inquiry 3 days ago after reading about a project at MIT's Media Lab. Self-healing glass, materials that could repair microfractures using embedded polymers and UV light. The concept had hooked her immediately, not for the technology itself, but for the metaphor. Glass that could be broken and made whole again. Glass that didn't accept damage as permanent. She opened the email. Elena, interesting questions. Most people ask about applications. You asked about failure modes. That's refreshing. I'm at the lab most mornings. Coffee's terrible but free. If you want to see the project, come by tomorrow around 9. Building E14, third floor. Dorian, tomorrow was today. Elena looked at herself in the mirror one more time. The bleeding had stopped, but her gums were still tender. She thought about enamel eroding slowly, the soft tissue underneath gradually exposed. She thought about medieval people who kept brushing despite the pain because the alternative was worse. She thought about her mother who had created something beautiful and died in the process. She thought about the folder on her desk, the scholarship, the future that was supposed to begin in September. Then she got dressed and left the house before her father could ask where she was going. The MIT Media Lab looked like a building designed by someone who had been told that the future should be made of glass and sharp angles. Elena had been on campus before her father occasionally dragged her to faculty events, but she'd never been inside E14. It was different from the classical architecture that dominated the rest of campus. It was aggressive. It wanted you to look at it. She found the third floor and followed the sound of machinery humming. The lab space was organized chaos, workbenches covered in equipment she couldn't name, whiteboards dense with equations, the smell of solder and coffee, and something faintly chemical. 3 people in various states of concentration, none of them looking up as she entered. "You're early," the voice came from a man standing near the back windows. Late 20s, maybe 30. Dark hair that looked like it had been styled with intention 3 days ago and then forgotten. Tired eyes that were sharp despite the exhaustion. He was holding a piece of glass up to the light, examining it. "Elena Wollstone," she said. "Dorian Ashford." He didn't move to shake hands. "You said in your email you were interested in failure. What kind?" "All kinds." He smiled slightly, not warm exactly, more like recognition of a fellow traveler on an unpopular road. "Good answer." He set the glass down carefully on a workbench. "Most people come here wanting to see success. But success is boring. Success means you stopped at the first thing that worked. Failure means you kept asking questions." He gestured for her to approach. The piece of glass looked ordinary, rectangular, about the size of a smartphone screen. Under certain light, there were faint lines, visible old cracks that had been repaired. "Do you know anything about medieval eyeglasses?" Dorian asked. Elena blinked at the non sequitur. "Not much. 13th century, Italy probably. Some glassmaker discovered that convex lenses could magnify text. Revolutionary for presbyopia, age-related farsightedness. Suddenly, people who were going blind could read again. Scholars could work decades longer. It should have been celebrated immediately." He picked up the glass, turning it slowly. But the design was terrible. 2 lenses connected by a bridge. No arms to hook over the ears. You balanced them on your nose and hoped. If you moved your head too quickly, they fell. If you bent over, they fell. If you sneezed, they abandoned you entirely. And if they hit the ground, they shattered. Glass was expensive, more expensive than gold in some places. "So people hated them," Elena said. "People despised them. There are letters from the period complaining about the discomfort, the inconvenience, the social awkwardness. Some people thought they were unnatural. Others claimed they weakened the eyes that, depending on artificial aid, would atrophy natural vision. A few suspected witchcraft." Dorian set the glass down again. "And yet they survived. People kept using them. You know why? Because being able to see was more important than being comfortable." "Exactly." He looked at her directly now. "They survived because the alternative, blindness, uselessness, dependence, was worse than the daily irritation of constantly adjusting, constantly retrieving them from the floor, constantly living with imperfect vision through imperfect tools." He paused. "It took 400 years before someone added arms to eyeglasses. 4 centuries of dropped, broken, cursed-at lenses. Not because people were stupid, because good enough to tolerate is the enemy of better than what we have." Elena felt something shift in her chest, recognition. She didn't know what she was recognizing yet, but it was there. "Your email said you were starting at MIT in the fall," Dorian continued. "Computer science and literature, that's an unusual combination. I want to understand how things are built, and how to tell stories about why they matter. Why do you care about self-healing glass?" She thought about her mother's journal, about enamel wearing away, about damage that accumulated silently until suddenly you couldn't ignore it anymore. "Because breaking is easy," she said. "Healing is the hard part." Dorian studied her for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of glasses, not modern ones, but vintage frames probably from the 1920s. Round lenses, thin metal arms, no padding anywhere. He handed them to her. Put them on. Elena did. The world swam slightly. The prescription wasn't right for her eyes. The frames sat oddly on her nose, too tight in some places, too loose in others. Within seconds, they started to slide. Uncomfortable, Dorian asked. Very. But you can see through them. Not perfectly, but you can function. Yes. That's the history of technology, not perfection, function. The question isn't, does it work perfectly? The question is it better than not having it? He took the glasses back. Glass is a perfect metaphor for this. We've been making it for 5,000 years. We still haven't perfected it. It still breaks. It still distorts. It still misleads. Did you know that old window glass is thicker at the bottom than the top because glass is technically a very slow-moving liquid? It flows. Over centuries, it sags. Elena hadn't known that. But we trust it, Dorian continued. We build skyscrapers with glass walls. We put glass in our pockets and call it a smartphone. We look through glass to see the stars, to see cells, to see each other through computer screens. We've built our entire civilization on a material that lies to us about being solid. He picked up the self-healing glass again. This project started because my father has Alzheimer's. Neurons dying, synapses breaking, connections that can't be repaired. I kept thinking if we can make glass that heals itself, if we can take broken material and make it whole again, maybe we can understand how to fix brains. Stupid metaphor. Doesn't translate, but it keeps me working. Did it work? Elena asked quietly. The glass, technically, yes. The polymer mesh we embedded can repair microfractures when exposed to UV light. The glass returns to 97% of its original strength. From an engineering perspective, it's a success. He set it down harder than necessary. My father, Alzheimer's doesn't heal. Neurons don't grow back. Every day he loses a little more of who he was. Every day I watch him become someone who looks like my father but isn't. The ghost of a person I used to know. Elena felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. It's what drives the work. He looked at her. What drives yours? She should have deflected. Should have said something generic about curiosity or career goals. But something about this space, the early morning quiet, the way Dorian had spoken without performing, made her honest. My mother died when I was born. I've spent my whole life being told I look like her, sound like her, have her intelligence. Like I'm some kind of resurrection. But I'm not her. I'm just the thing that killed her. Dorian didn't offer sympathy, didn't try to correct her. He just nodded. That's a hard inheritance. Yes. What are you going to do with it? Elena touched the workbench. The wood was scarred from years of use. Burns from soldering irons, gouges from dropped tools. A history of creation written in damage. I don't know yet, but I want to make something that lasts, something that matters, something that doesn't break just by existing. Good luck, Dorian said. Most things break just by existing. That's the nature of existing. He checked his watch, an old mechanical one, visible gears through the crystal back. I have a meeting, but you're welcome to stay. Look around. Anyone here can explain what they're doing, probably at excessive length. He started to walk away, then stopped. Elena, there's a dinner party tomorrow night. Academic type, some industry people. Probably boring, but someone there you should meet. Professor who works on, well, you'll see. Come if you're interested. He wrote an address on a sticky note. What should I wear? Elena asked. Something that makes you feel like yourself. The rest is performance anyway. Then he left. Elena stood alone in the lab, surrounded by equipment. She didn't understand looking at a piece of glass that had been broken and made whole again, but would never be exactly what it was before. She thought about her mother's journal. Creation is curse. She thought about medieval people scraping their teeth raw every morning. She thought about eyeglasses that fell and broke and were cursed at for 4 centuries. She thought about Dorian's father losing himself piece by piece. She pulled out her phone and opened the notes app. Started typing. Chapter 1. The modern Prometheus. There's a difference between healing and resurrection. Healing acknowledges the wound. Resurrection pretends it never happened. I don't know which one I want yet, but I know the first step is the same. You have to be willing to break something. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she added one more line. Even if that something is yourself. The house belonged to someone named Byron Kensington. Elena Googled him before arriving. Harvard bioengineering professor. Published extensively on cryonics and cellular preservation. Age 32. 3 minor scandals related to unauthorized research all settled quietly. A face that photographed well-sharp features, dark eyes, the kind of symmetry that looked artificial, but wasn't. The party was already underway when Elena arrived at 7:30. She'd chosen black jeans and a gray sweater simple enough to be invisible, dark enough to hide anxiety sweat. Dorian met her at the door. He looked tired but cleaned up button-down shirt, actual ironed pants, hair that had been forcibly organized. Behind him through the doorway, Elena could see a woman. Blonde professional, standing with the posture of someone who owned every room she entered. "Elena, this is Harriet. My wife." The word landed like a stone. Elena had known. Dorian had mentioned it, but knowing abstractly and meeting concretely were different animals. Harriet extended a hand. Her grip was firm without being aggressive. "The girl who asks about failure modes. Dorian's been talking about you." "Nothing interesting, I hope?" "Everything interesting." Harriet's smile was polite. Her eyes were calculating. "He says you're starting at MIT in the fall. What are you planning to study?" "Computer science and literature." Unusual combination. "I like understanding how systems work and how to explain why they matter." "Practical." Harriet glanced at Dorian. "Unlike some people." It wasn't cruel, just accurate. The kind of thing that's said between people who'd had the same argument enough times to shorthand it. Dorian gestured inside. "Byron's in the back, library. That's who you're here to meet." Elena followed him through rooms filled with carefully curated furniture and carefully curated conversations. Academic debates that sounded important and meant nothing. Industry gossip dressed up as insight. The social performance of intelligence. Harriet disappeared into a cluster of lawyers. Elena felt her watching, cataloging, assessing threat level. The library looked used. Books piled on tables, papers marked with sticky notes, a desk covered in what appeared to be grant applications. Byron Kensington sat in a leather chair near the fireplace holding a glass of something amber. He looked up when they entered. "This is Elena," Dorian said. Byron stood, extended a hand. His grip was firm without being aggressive. "Dorian tells me you ask good questions." "I ask a lot of questions. I'm not sure they're good." "The good ones usually aren't sure." Byron gestured to the other chairs. "Sit, tell me what you're working on." "I'm not working on anything. I'm starting MIT in September." "Everyone's working on something. Even if it's just working on figuring out what to work on. What interests you?" Elena glanced at Dorian, who gave a slight nod. "Permission or maybe encouragement." "I'm interested in failure," she said. "Things that don't work but survive anyway. Things that should have been abandoned but weren't. Things that succeed by accident or by stubbornness instead of by design." Byron smiled, not polite cocktail party smile, real interest. "Give me an example." "Medieval alarm clocks." "I'm listening." Elena settled into her chair. This was safer than talking about herself. History was facts. Facts didn't require vulnerability. Before mechanical clocks, people needed to wake up at specific times, mostly for work or prayer, but there was no reliable way to do it. So they invented, well, calling them inventions is generous. They created systems. Byron leaned forward slightly. One method was the candle clock. You marked the candle at specific heights, then inserted metal nails at those marks. As the candle burned down, the wax melted until the nail fell out and landed on a metal plate. The noise was supposed to wake you. "Supposed to," Byron repeated. "Right. Problems: if wind blew through the room, the candle burned faster. You woke up early. If the candle was low quality, it burned slower, you woke up late. If the nail was inserted at the wrong angle, it fell early or not at all. And if the nail happened to land on straw or cloth instead of the plate." "Fire," Dorian finished. "Fire," Elena confirmed. Medieval alarm clocks occasionally burned down houses. They were unreliable, dangerous, and caused the problem they were supposed to solve. People stayed awake, worrying about whether the alarm would work. But people kept using them, Byron said. They did, because the alternative, oversleeping and missing work, missing prayer, missing whatever was time critical, was worse than the daily stress of maybe dying in a fire. They chose anxiety over consequence. Byron set down his glass. "That's not a story about alarm clocks. That's a story about human nature. We'll accept terrible solutions to immediate problems and call it progress. We'll live with danger we can see rather than risk failure we can't predict." "Exactly," Elena said. "So what changed?" "Metallurgy, springs, gears. Eventually someone figured out how to store mechanical energy and release it gradually. But that took centuries. Generations of people lived and died using the candle method, knowing it was terrible, unable to invent something better because the materials and knowledge didn't exist yet. Byron stood and walked to one of the bookshelves, pulled down a leather-bound volume that looked genuinely old. "Do you know what I work on?" he asked. "Cryonics, cell preservation." "Close, I work on reversing death." Elena felt the air in the room shift. Byron opened the book not to read, just to give his hands something to do. The human body is a machine, complex, yes, poorly understood, certainly, but still a machine. And machines can be repaired. That's the hypothesis. That's what drives my entire field. The idea that death isn't binary, alive or dead, but a spectrum. Clinical death, brain death, cellular death. These happen in sequence, not simultaneously, which means there's a window. He looked at her directly. 6 minutes. That's approximately how long between when the heart stops and when brain damage becomes irreversible. 6 minutes when someone is technically dead but theoretically recoverable. My work asks, why stop at 6 minutes? If we can preserve cells, if we can prevent decay, if we can restart biological processes that have halted, why accept death as permanent? Because it is permanent, Elena said quietly. Isn't it? We thought flight was impossible until it wasn't. We thought communicating across continents instantly was fantasy until it wasn't. We thought splitting atoms was science fiction until Hiroshima. Permanence is just another word for we haven't solved it yet. Dorian shifted in his chair. Byron showed me something last month, a rat that had been clinically dead for 48 hours. And how fun? And it's alive now, heart beating, brain functioning. Not perfectly, there's some neurological damage, but it's alive. It exists, it moves, it experiences something we can measure as consciousness. Elena felt cold despite the fireplace. How? Byron closed the book. That's proprietary. Also illegal without proper authorization, which I'm working on. The serum works by targeting cellular ATP, production adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency of cells. When the heart stops, ATP production crashes. Cells can't maintain their ion gradients. Calcium floods the cytoplasm. Enzymes start breaking down proteins. That's what we call death. He sat back down. But it's not instant. It's a cascade, and cascades can be interrupted. The serum contains a cocktail of compounds that jumpstart mitochondrial function, flush calcium, inhibit destructive enzymes, and provide substrate for immediate ATP synthesis. We inject it directly into cardiac tissue. If the timing is right, if cellular degradation hasn't progressed too far, the heart restarts, like turning a key in an engine that's been off too long. In the brain? Elena asked. That's the harder part. The serum gets to the brain through restored circulation, but neurons are fragile. 6 minutes without oxygen causes damage. 48 hours causes catastrophic damage. Subject 17. The rat came back with approximately 73% neurological function. Memory gaps, motor control issues, but conscious, aware, alive by any reasonable definition. Byron paused. The real question isn't whether we can restart the machine. It's whether the machine that restarts is the same as the one that stopped. Whether consciousness is a continuous process or a pattern that can be interrupted and resumed. Whether you are the cells or the connections between them. Elena's mind was racing. This was wrong. This had to be wrong. You couldn't just restart a heart and call it resurrection. Could you? What happens when it doesn't work? She asked. You mean when the rat stays dead? I mean when you bring something back and it's not the same. When the thing that wakes up isn't the thing that died. When you've created something new wearing something old skin. Byron smiled, not warm, recognizing a fellow traveler on a dark road. Then you've just described every form of creation humans have ever attempted. Birth art, technology, civilization itself. We never get what we intended. We get something close, something adjacent, something that wears the shape of our intention but has its own agenda. He picked up his glass again. Your mother wrote about this, didn't she, Margaret Wollstone? The vindication of motherhood. I read it in graduate school. She argued that women weren't creating smaller, weaker versions of men. They were creating something entirely new that happened to share genetic material. That creation wasn't about replication. It was about transformation. Elena stared at him. You know who my mother was? Dorian mentioned, I'm sorry for your loss. The words were automatic, but his eyes weren't. They were watching her with the same intensity he probably gave to his research, like she was a problem to be solved or a variable to be isolated. She died creating me, Elena said. That's the cost of her transformation. She became something new, a mother, and it killed her. Would you undo it? Byron asked. If you could go back and make her choose differently, let the book go unwritten. The pregnancy terminated, her life extended. I can't undo it. That's the entire point. Humor me. If you had power over the past, what would you choose? Elena thought about the journal in her nightstand. I'd want her to choose herself, but I exist because she didn't. So I can't want that without wishing myself out of existence. It's not a choice, it's a trap. Byron leaned back satisfied. Exactly. Creation is always a trap. The moment you make something, you're locked in. You can't unmake it without destroying part of yourself. That's why most people don't create anything significant. It's safer to consume, to critique, to stand outside the trap and congratulate yourself on not being caught. He finished his drink. But some people can't help themselves. They have to create even knowing the current, even knowing the trap, even knowing that what they make might destroy them or survive them or both. Your mother was like that. I suspect you are too. Elena felt something in her chest, recognition again, stronger this time. What makes you think that? Because you're here. You could be anywhere. It's summer. You're 18. You could be on a beach or at a party or making normal, terrible decisions with normal, terrible people. Instead, you're in my library talking about medieval alarm clocks and the philosophy of resurrection. That's not normal. That's obsession. He stood. Come see the lab, both of you. I have something I want to show you. The basement had been converted into something between laboratory and workshop. Clean but cluttered, expensive equipment next to jury-rigged modifications. The smell of chemicals and electricity. Byron went to a refrigeration unit and removed a glass container. Inside, a small rat, very much alive. Whiskers twitching. This is subject 17, died June 2nd. Cardiac arrest induced by controlled drug administration. Dead for 48 hours, 18 minutes. Brought back June 4th using the serum I've been developing for 3 years. The rat looked normal, moved normally, but there was something in Elena's hindbrain screaming that this was wrong. This was breaking rules she didn't know existed. Neurological function, Dorian asked. Approximately 73% of baseline, some memory loss, some motor control issues, but conscious, aware, alive by any reasonable definition. And the other 16 subjects, Byron returned the container to the refrigerator. Learning experiences. Failed experiments teach you more than successful ones. 17 is alive because 1 through 16 aren't. That's how science works. That's how everything works. You iterate until you get it right. Elena found her voice. Get what right exactly? You brought a rat back. What's the end goal? Byron turned to face them. Human trials. A willing subject. Someone who's dying anyway. Someone who has nothing to lose and potentially everything to gain. Someone who understands the risks and accepts them. That's illegal, Elena said. So was flying at one point. So was most surgery. So was teaching women to read in some places. Legality follows morality, and morality follows understanding, and understanding follows experimentation. You can't understand until you try. He walked to his desk and picked up a tablet, pulled up an email, handed it to Elena. The subject line, I volunteer. The message, Dr. Kensington. I saw your papers on cellular preservation. I have stage 4 lung cancer. 3 weeks, maybe 4, according to my doctors. I've settled my affairs, said my goodbyes, made peace with dying. But if there's a chance, any chance to test your theories, to contribute to knowledge, to maybe wake up on the other side of death and have something to say about it, I'm interested. Let me be your subject 18. Isabel Thornfield. Elena read it twice. When did this come in? Yesterday. And you're considering it? I'm not considering it. I'm doing it. If she's still willing after I explain the risks. If we can find a legal framework that protects everyone involved. If I can get the materials and space I need. Then yes, I'm doing it. He took the tablet back. This is what your mother wrote about, Elena. Someone choosing to create something, in this case knowledge, even knowing it might kill them. Even knowing the risks. That's not recklessness. That's the most human thing there is, the refusal to accept limits. Elena looked at the rat in the refrigerator. Alive, but not quite. Functioning, but damaged. A miracle or a horror, depending on how you framed it. She thought about medieval alarm clocks burning houses down. She thought about her mother bleeding out after childbirth, her book finished, but her daughter unseen. She thought about the journal entry. But I cannot stop. When, she asked, Byron smiled. That depends. How fast can you learn? Voices from the floor above. The party continuing, laughter, clinking glasses. The performance of normalcy while in the basement, someone plotted to resurrect the dead. Elena heard footsteps on the stairs, a woman's voice. Byron, are you down here? People are asking. Harriet appeared in the doorway, saw Elena, saw Dorian, saw Byron standing next to the refrigerator containing subject 17. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. You're showing them. They asked intelligent questions, Byron said. Dorian, can I speak with you upstairs, now? It wasn't a request. Dorian glanced at Elena, apologetic. I'll be right back. They left. Elena heard their voices through the ceiling, not the words, just the tone. Harriet's controlled, Dorian's defensive. Byron was unbothered. She doesn't approve of my work, thinks it's unethical. She's probably right. Why do it then? Because being right and being important aren't the same thing. He closed the refrigerator. My brother Adrian, age 14, drowning accident in Cape Cod. I pulled him out. Too late. By the time the ambulance arrived, he'd been without oxygen for 8 minutes. They revived him. Heart started. Lungs worked. Eyes opened. Byron's voice was steady, but his hands weren't. But he wasn't there anymore. The person who woke up had Adrian's face, Adrian's body. But everything that made him Adrian, his humor, his curiosity, the way he'd argue with me about astronomy gone. Erased. The 8 minutes of oxygen deprivation killed the parts that mattered and left behind a biological system that breathed and blinked and swallowed, but didn't think, didn't dream, didn't exist in any way that mattered. I'm sorry, Elena said. He lived 6 more months, then pneumonia, and I sat with my parents while they decided whether to treat it, whether to extend the existence of something that looked like their son but wasn't. They chose to let him go, chose to let him die twice. First the drowning, then the pneumonia, because resurrection without wholeness is worse than death. Byron met her eyes. I've spent 15 years trying to understand what happened in those 8 minutes. Why some parts of the brain can be revived and others can't. Where consciousness lives. Whether it can be preserved or restored or if it's just gone when the oxygen runs out. And the rat proves it's possible, not perfect, not complete, but possible. 73% is better than 0%, better than watching someone die twice. Elena heard raised voices upstairs. Harriet's, Dorian's. Byron heard them too. That marriage won't last another year. Harriet wants stability. Dorian wants meaning. Those don't reconcile. Is that why you're not married? I was married. She left when the obsession became more important than the relationship. She was right to leave. I was already gone. He started toward the stairs. Come on. Before Harriet decides I'm corrupting more innocent minds. They returned to the party. The library had filled with more people. Harriet stood near the fireplace, wine glass in hand, speaking with another couple. Dorian was on the far side of the room, not meeting anyone's eyes. Byron was pulled into conversation with a dean from Harvard Medical School. Something about grant applications. Elena found herself alone near the bookshelves. She pulled out her phone, started a new note. Medieval alarm clocks forced a choice. Wake up or don't, act or sleep. The tool was terrible, but it demanded decision. Byron is offering the same thing, not a choice between life and death. A choice between knowing and not knowing, between testing the limits and accepting them. Is that brave, or just another way to burn the house down, Elena? She looked up. Harriet stood close. Too close, deliberate invasion of personal space. I need to tell you something about Dorian, about Byron, about what you're getting involved in. I'm not getting involved in anything. Not yet, but you will. I've seen this pattern. Harriet's voice was quiet but sharp. Byron finds smart young people, usually women, usually isolated, usually looking for meaning. He makes them feel seen, understood, special. Then he pulls them into his obsessions. And when the obsession destroys them, and it always destroys them, he moves on to the next one. That's not. Last year it was a graduate student. Brilliant. Promising. She helped Byron with subject 12. Watched it die screaming. Had a breakdown. Dropped out. She's working retail now. Can't even walk past a laboratory without panic attacks. Harriet finished her wine. Dorian does the same thing, different pattern. He finds women who remind him of his idealized self, treats them like mirrors, reflects his genius back at himself. And when they stop reflecting, when they start having their own needs, their own ideas, he finds a new mirror. Last year, a grad student. Year before, a journalist. You're this year's model. Elena felt cold. Is that why you're telling me this professional jealousy? I'm telling you this because I was the mirror once, 8 years ago, before I was his wife, when I was his reflection. And I watched him go through 3 other women before realizing that I was replaceable. We all are. So I made a choice. Become permanent by becoming necessary instead of interesting. Handle his life so he can handle his work. It's not love, it's a contract. And I honor it. But I don't let him destroy other people. She set down her glass. Byron will ask you to help with his experiment. Dorian will encourage you because it makes him feel important by association. And you'll say yes because you're 18 and brilliant and desperate to matter. And it will destroy something in you that you won't even know you lost until years later when you realize you can't trust your own judgment anymore. Why tell me this? Because your mother wrote a book I read in college about how women aren't given choices. They're given the illusion of choice. And I'm giving you an actual choice. Walk away now before you become another person Byron uses for data. Harriet walked away. Elena stood very still. Across the room, Dorian was watching her. He said something to the person he'd been half listening to and started toward her. Elena made a decision. She picked up a wine glass from the side table. Full, red, expensive probably. Dorian reached her. Elena, I'm sorry about earlier. Harriet doesn't understand. She threw the wine in his face. The room went silent. Red wine dripped from Dorian's hair, his shirt pooling on the hardwood floor. What the, Harriet told me about the grad student and the journalist and everyone else you've used as a mirror. I'm not your reflection. I'm not your muse. I'm not this year's project. She set down the empty glass. In medieval times, women had no recourse against men who lied. Now we do. It's called public humiliation. Thank you for the object lesson in failure modes. Turns out the failure was you. She walked toward the door. Byron caught up with her in the hallway. Elena, wait. Did you know about Dorian's pattern? Yes. And you still invited me here. Because you're not here for Dorian. You're here for the work. And unlike everyone Harriet mentioned, you're not looking for validation. You're looking for answers. That's different. How? Because validation seekers break when the mirror cracks. Answer seekers break when they find what they're looking for. And you're the kind of person who needs to know what it costs to get answers. He handed her a business card. My lab, address on the back. Email on the front. Isabel Thornfield arrives Monday for preliminary consultation. If you're interested in learning how to calculate the probability of resurrection, come by Tuesday morning. I haven't decided if I'm interested. Yes, you have. You decided the moment you heard about Subject 17. Everything else is just negotiating with yourself about whether to admit it. Elena took the card. Behind Byron, she could see into the library. Dorian holding a towel someone had given him. Harriet standing perfectly still watching. Other guests pretending not to stare. What you said about creation being a trap, Elena said. Do you believe that completely? Then why do it? Byron smiled, sad, honest. Because I'm already in the trap. Have been since Adrian drowned. The only question is whether I spring it or let it spring me. At least if I spring it myself, I control the timing. He went back inside. Elena left through the front door, walked to the T station, rode the train back to Beacon Hill, let herself into the brownstone through the side entrance, went upstairs, sat on her bed, pulled out her mother's journal. Creation is curse, but I cannot stop. Elena looked at Byron's business card. Then she opened her laptop and started researching probability models for biological systems, machine learning applications to medical data, how to calculate odds when the sample size was 16 dead rats and 1 living miracle. She worked until 4 a.m. When she finally slept, she dreamed about alarm clocks made of fire. 3 months collapsed into memory like a poorly shuffled deck of cards. June became July, became August, and Elena stopped going home except to sleep. Sometimes not even then. Byron's basement lab had a couch that smelled like old leather and chemical residue. And she'd wake up at 3 a.m. with her laptop still open, code still running, coffee still cold in a mug she didn't remember pouring. Her father noticed, said nothing. That was his way, observation without intervention, the philosopher's approach to parenting. Vivian noticed too, also said nothing, but her silence felt different, more like relief. One less person requiring emotional maintenance in a house that ran on carefully rationed affection. Her half-sister Clarissa had noticed, though, and unlike the adults, Clarissa demanded answers. The confrontation came in late July. Clarissa showed up at the brownstone unannounced, fresh off the train from New York. She was 19, a theater student at NYU with dyed purple hair and the kind of confidence that came from being equally comfortable on stage and in dive bars. "You look like hell," Clarissa said, standing in Elena's doorway. "Nice to see you too. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't caffeine?" Elena thought about it. "Yesterday." "Liar. Dad says you're doing a research internship." "That's bullshit. You're too secretive, too obsessed. This is something else." "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicated." Elena closed her laptop, looked at Clarissa. They'd never been close, different mothers, different lives, only connected by their father's stubborn belief that family meant something, even when genetics suggested otherwise. But Clarissa had a quality Elena envied: the ability to see through performance to truth. "If I tell you," Elena said, "you can't tell anyone, not Dad, not Vivian, no one." Clarissa sat on the bed. "Now I'm interested." Elena told her everything: Dorian, Byron, Subject 17, Isabel Thornfield. The plan to attempt human resurrection using a serum that might work or might create horror. Clarissa listened without interrupting. When Elena finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's insane." "I know. Like genuinely, completely, probably illegal, insane." "I know. And you're helping with this." "I'm building the predictive model, the AI that calculates probability of success based on biological markers, time since death, cellular degradation rates. I'm not doing the medical part, just the math." Clarissa stood, paced. "This is going to fail spectacularly. You know that, right? And when it fails, everyone involved is going to get destroyed. Legally, professionally, emotionally. Probably. So why do it?" Elena thought about her mother's journal, about medieval alarm clocks, about Subject 17 running mazes in a cage. Because someone has to know. Someone has to try. And if I don't help, Byron will try anyway, with worse math. Lower chances, more certain failure. At least if I'm involved, we're failing with good data. Clarissa stopped pacing. "You sound like Mom. Margaret, I mean. Not my mom, yours. I read her book. She had that same martyr complex, that belief that dying for knowledge was noble. It wasn't noble. She just couldn't stop herself. And you're the same. Maybe." Clarissa pulled out her phone. "When is this happening?" "Late August, probably the 23rd, after Isabel's last round of palliative care." "I'm documenting it." Elena blinked. "What?" "I'm a theater student, but I'm applying to film programs. I need portfolio material. And this," she gestured vaguely, "this is the most important story you're going to be part of. Whether it succeeds or fails, someone should record it honestly, not for entertainment, for history. Byron will never agree." "Don't ask him. Ask the dying woman. If she says yes, it's her choice. If she says no, I won't push." Elena stared at her half-sister. "Why would you do this?" "Because you're about to do something that'll either change the world or destroy your life. Probably both. And someone who cares about you should be there, since apparently I'm the only one who qualifies." Clarissa left shortly after. Elena sat in her room staring at the wall. Then she texted Byron. "My sister wants to document the procedure. Film it, for the record." Would Isabel be willing to meet her? Byron's response came 3 minutes later. "Bring her to the consultation Monday." Isabel decides. Monday arrived like an appointment with inevitability. Elena and Clarissa took the T to Cambridge. Walked to Byron's house. The lab entrance was around back through a door that looked like it led to storage, but actually opened to stairs descending into what had once been a wine cellar. Now it was something else. Clean, clinical, filled with equipment that probably cost more than Elena's college tuition. Isabel Thornfield sat in a chair near Byron's desk. She looked smaller than Elena had imagined. Gray hair pulled back simply, face lined but alert, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion of dying slowly. "You must be Elena," Isabel said. "Byron's told me about you. The girl who calculated my odds at 12%. 12.7, Elena said. "The model's been updated." "Generous," Isabel turned to Clarissa. "And you're the filmmaker." "Theater student, actually, but trying to transition." "Why do you want to film this?" Clarissa didn't hesitate. "Because it's real. Because it matters. Because whether you come back or don't, people should know what it cost. What you chose. What everyone involved risked." Isabel nodded slowly. "You're not doing this for art. You're doing it for witness." "Yes." "Good. Art can lie. Witness has to tell truth." She looked at Byron. "She can film everything. No restrictions. If I'm going to be Subject 18, I want the record to be complete." Byron agreed with a nod. Isabel turned back to Elena. "Walk with me. Outside." I need air that doesn't smell like laboratory. They left Clarissa setting up preliminary equipment and Byron reviewing consent forms. Walk through Byron's garden, overgrown, neglected, beautiful in its chaos. Tell me about mattresses, Isabel said. Elena blinked. What? Byron said you're researching medieval failures. Things that didn't work but survived. Tell me about mattresses. Elena organized her thoughts. Medieval mattresses were sacks of straw, sometimes hay, occasionally feathers if you were wealthy. They were uncomfortable, full of insects, moldy. People slept on biological experiments. Woke up with rashes, bites, respiratory infections. The straw had to be changed constantly. It was expensive, labor-intensive, and never really worked. But people kept using them. Because sleeping on stone floors was worse. Comfort is relative. We adapt to terrible conditions if we're given enough time and no better options. Isabel sat on a bench, gestured for Elena to join her. I have 3 weeks, maybe 2. Lung cancer doesn't negotiate. Every morning I wake up surprised I'm still required to be conscious. She paused. I think about your medieval people a lot. They didn't have a choice about their mattresses. No one had invented springs or foam, so they accepted discomfort as the price of horizontal rest. And you see yourself as the straw, Elena said quietly. I see myself as someone who has a choice now. Stay dead or try to come back. Accept the end or gamble on resurrection. Isabel looked at the garden. My daughter Meredith wants me to go to hospice. Make peace, let go. She's probably right. That's the wise choice, the sane choice. But you're not choosing that. No, because I keep thinking, are we at that point, is death the straw mattress of existence? Terrible but unavoidable, given current technology? Or is it something else? She pulled an envelope from her pocket, handed it to Elena. I wrote this last night for you. Don't open it unless the experiment fails. If I come back, if I'm really back, myself conscious, aware, burn it. But if something goes wrong, if I don't come back or come back as something else, read it. It'll explain things. Elena took the envelope. It was sealed with actual wax. Old-fashioned. Deliberate. Isabel, I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to let me help save someone else. Someday, maybe. If your experiment fails, I die slightly earlier than planned. If it succeeds, well, then we learn something. Then the straw mattress gets a little bit better for whoever comes next. They sat in silence for a while. Then Isabel said, I had a sister, twin, Margaret. She died when we were 30. Same cancer, same progression. She volunteered for experimental treatment. It failed. She suffered enormously, and I hated her for choosing research over peace. You understand now. I understand that she bought me an extra 37 years. The treatment she tried failed, but the data from her case led to better treatments that gave me this time. She died so I could live longer. Isabel stood, slowly, painfully. Now it's my turn. Maybe I'm buying someone else 37 years. Maybe I'm just adding a footnote to medical history. But either way, I'm choosing to matter, to contribute, to leave the mattress slightly less uncomfortable. They walked back inside. Clarissa had set up 3 cameras, different angles, professional-grade equipment borrowed from NYU under dubious pretenses. If we're doing this, Clarissa said, we're doing it right. Byron presented the consent forms. Pages and pages of legal language about experimental procedures, assumption of risk, acknowledgement that death was not only possible but likely. Isabel signed without reading them all. My daughter didn't come, she said quietly. I told her when and where. She chose not to be here. I don't blame her. This is grotesque. I'm choosing grotesque. She's choosing to remember me before I made that choice. We can wait, Byron said. Delay until. No, we're doing this now, while I can still walk to the table, while I can still choose. Elena lived in the lab, actually lived there. Byron converted a storage room into something approximating a bedroom. Cot lamp space for her laptop. She showered at the MIT gym, ate food Clarissa brought, existed in a state of sustained focus that felt like being underwater. The AI model consumed her. Training data from 16 failed subjects, neurological markers, cellular degradation rates, environmental factors. She built it, refined it, tested it against simulated scenarios. The final number, 12.7% chance of meaningful revival with minimal neurological damage. 41.3% chance of partial revival, 40 to 70% function like subject 17. 28.9% chance of severe damage, less than 40% function, 17.1% chance of no revival at all. Not good odds, but better than zero. Clarissa spent the 2 weeks interviewing everyone. Byron about his methodology, Elena about the math, Isabel about her choice. She filmed the lab, the equipment, the rat in its cage, built context, built narrative. This isn't just about whether it works, Clarissa said while adjusting a camera. It's about what we're willing to try, what we're willing to risk. That's the real story. On August 20th, Meredith Thornfield came to the lab. She was 42, an architect with her mother's sharp eyes and harder boundaries. She'd agreed to meet Byron, review the consent forms, understand what her mother was choosing. The conversation happened in Byron's office above the lab. Elena wasn't present, but she heard raised voices, crying, long silences. When Meredith left, she didn't say goodbye to her mother. Isabel watched through the window as Meredith's car drove away. "She'll forgive me," Isabel said. "Eventually." Elena wasn't sure that was true, but she nodded anyway. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She pulled out her medieval document, added a new entry. Medieval buttons were decorative. Status symbols. They served no functional purpose that laces or ties couldn't serve better and faster. But they looked refined, sophisticated. The more buttons you had, the wealthier you appeared. Early buttons took minutes to fasten. They fell off constantly. Finding a drop button on a medieval floor was nearly impossible. But people kept using them because appearance mattered more than function. We still do this. We add complexity, not because it works better, but because it signals effort, intelligence, status. We over-engineer solutions to simple problems and call it progress. This experiment is the same. We could let Isabel die peacefully, quickly, with dignity. Instead, we're adding buttons, complexity, risk, because trying feels more sophisticated than accepting. But maybe that's not wrong. Maybe buttons survived because they forced humans to slow down, to invest time in the act of dressing, to acknowledge that some things are worth doing slowly even when faster options exist. Maybe resurrection is the same, worth attempting even when acceptance is easier. I don't know yet. The day was sunny, inappropriate for what they were attempting. Sky too blue, air too clear, weather that mocked the weight of resurrection. Elena woke at 5 a.m. on the lab couch. Byron was already there checking equipment. Clarissa arrived at 6, began setting up cameras, testing angles, ensuring every moment would be recorded. Isabel arrived at 6:30 in an Uber. She'd refused Meredith's offer to drive her, wanted to arrive independently, on her own terms. She wore comfortable clothes, yoga pants, a soft sweater, dressed for dying comfortably. "I'm ready," she said. She wasn't. No one could be. But she was willing. That had to be enough. Byron had everything prepared. Medical monitors, IV stands, crash cart. Everything you'd find in an ER condensed into a space that was definitely not zoned for human experimentation. Isabel sat on the exam table, looked around at the equipment, the cameras, the screens showing her own vital signs steady and strong despite the cancer. "It's very clean," she said. Elena almost laughed. "Is that good or bad?" "Good. Medieval surgery was done in barbershops, on unwashed tables, with unwashed hands. At least if I die, it'll be from the experiment, not from infection." She was trying to be light. It wasn't working. Fear had a smell, and it filled the basement despite the air filtration. Byron handed Isabel the consent tablet. "One last time. You can still change your mind." "I know. We're going to inject you with a sedative. Your heart will stop within 90 seconds. You'll be clinically dead. We'll wait 6 hours, enough time for cellular degradation to begin, but not complete. Then we'll inject the revival serum. It should restart your heart within 2 to 3 minutes, if it works. And if it doesn't, then you stay dead, and we know what went wrong." Isabel signed the tablet. Her signature was shaky but deliberate. "I'm ready." Clarissa started recording. Elena's hands were shaking. She clasped them together. "Focus. Be useful. Don't think about what this means. Just execute the steps." Byron prepared the sedative. Elena queued up the monitoring software. Everything automated now, timestamps, data logging, video recording from 3 angles. "Elena," Isabel said. She looked up. "Tell me something about buttons." "What?" "Your medieval inventions. You told me about mattresses. Tell me about buttons. I need to think about something else right now." Elena's mind went blank, then found the file. Buttons were invented in the 13th century. Before that, people used laces, ties, pins, Simple systems that worked quickly. Buttons were decorative at first, status symbols. The more buttons you had, the wealthier you were. So they were impractical. Completely. Early buttons took minutes to fasten. They fell off constantly. Finding a drop button on a medieval floor dark uneven was nearly impossible. But they looked refined, so people kept using them. Because appearance mattered more than function. Because appearance was function. Looking wealthy made you wealthy. The button's job wasn't to hold clothes together, it was to announce I have time and money to spend 10 minutes getting dressed. Isabel smiled slightly. Adaptation. Exactly. Things that survive aren't things that work perfectly. They're things that find new purposes when old purposes fail. Byron approached with the syringe. Last chance, he said. Isabel looked at Elena. If this works, I'm adapted. If it doesn't, I'm a decorative failure. Either way, I'm a button. She rolled up her sleeve. Byron found the vein on the second try, inserted the needle, pushed the plunger. 90 seconds, he'd said. Elena counted. The monitor showed Isabel's heart rate dropping. 80, 70, 60. Her eyes were already closing. The sedative was strong, medical grade, no pain. That had been the promise. 30. Isabel's chest rose and fell slower now. Mechanical, reflexive. 10. Then the sound Elena would never forget. The monitor's steady beep elongating into a single tone. Flatline, 0000000. The timer started. 6 hours. Isabel Thornfield was dead. Clarissa kept filming. Byron checked readings. Elena verified data logging. Everything recording properly. Isabel's body temperature began dropping immediately. They'd accounted for that, had warming blankets ready. Brain activity, none. Heartbeat, none. Respiratory function, none. Dead, completely, measurably. Elena had expected to feel horror. Instead, she felt focus. The same focus she brought to coding. Isabel wasn't a person right now. She was a variable. Data waiting to be collected. The second hour, Byron went upstairs to make coffee. Elena stayed watching screens that showed nothing changing. The third hour, doubt arrived. The basement door opened. Footsteps on the stairs. Elena looked up. Clarissa stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, phone in her hand, face pale. What's wrong? Elena asked. I need to tell you something. I did something. Byron returned carrying coffee. What happened? Clarissa's voice was small. I've been streaming this to my Vimeo account. For my portfolio, I thought it was my footage, my cameras, my right to document. Elena felt cold. How long? Since we started, since the injection. How many people? Clarissa checked her phone. 47,000. It went viral. People are sharing it, calling it art, calling it science, calling it a horror show. Byron crossed to Clarissa in 3 strides, took her phone, looked at the screen. The chat was exploding. Is this real? This has to be fake. Someone call the police. This is murder. This is a miracle. What the fuck am I watching? Byron's face went very still. Shut it down. I can't. Once it's live, it's archived. Even if I delete, people have recorded it. Then we have approximately, Byron checked his watch, 4 hours before police arrive. Maybe less if someone's already called. Elena stood. We have to finish. We're at hour 3 of 6. If we stop now, Isabel dies for nothing. She might die for nothing anyway, Byron said. But at least we won't be doing it in front of 50,000 witnesses. 47,000, Clarissa whispered. Byron looked at the body, at Isabel, at the monitor showing nothing. Nothing. We finish, he said. Whatever happens after we finish what we started. She chose this, knowing the risks. We don't compound the failure by quitting. Hour 4. Elena watched the phone Byron had confiscated. The viewer count climbed. 52,000, 58,000, 64,000. The comments were no longer curious. They were certain. Someone needs to stop this. I've called Boston PD. This woman needs help. This is illegal. Human experimentation. Why isn't anyone stopping them? Clarissa sat in the corner, knees pulled to chest. I'm sorry, I thought documentation was neutral. That recording truth couldn't be wrong. Recording truth is neutral, Elena said. Broadcasting it without consent isn't. She consented to being filmed. She consented to being documented, not performed. There's a difference. Hour 5. Byron's phone rang. He silenced it. It rang again. Different number, silenced. Again. He turned it off entirely. Elena's phone 7 missed calls from her father. 15 texts. Where are you, Elena? Answer me. I saw the video. Tell me that's not you, Elena. She silenced her phone. Clarissa said quietly, I've destroyed all of us. No, Byron said. I destroyed us when I started this research. You just accelerated the timeline. Hour 6 approached. Outside sounds, cars, voices, someone trying the door upstairs. Police are here, Byron said calmly. They'll need a warrant to enter. That buys us maybe 30 minutes. Unit at 00054500. Byron prepared the revival serum. Elena checked the monitors one final time. Everything recording, every sensor functioning. Ready? Byron asked. Ready, banging on the door upstairs. Boston police, we have a warrant. Open the door. Byron found the vein harder now with blood pressure at 0. Inserted the needle. The door upstairs crashed open. Footsteps. Multiple people. Byron pushed the plunger. The serum entered Isabel's body. 30 seconds, nothing. 60 seconds, nothing. Police voices, basement. There's a basement entrance, see? 90 seconds, Elena felt her chest tighten. 120 seconds, nothing. Footsteps on the basement stairs. 145 seconds. The monitor made a sound. Not the flat line. Different. Higher. A blip on the screen. Then another. Beep. A heartbeat. Beep. Another. Beep. 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 Regular. Steady. Impossible. Police entered the lab, saw the body, saw the monitors. Saw the heartbeat, stopped. Because Isabel Thornfield's heart was beating. Byron checked the brain monitor. Activity, minimal but present. Neurons firing, synapses connecting. Elena couldn't breathe. This was working. This was actually working. Then Isabel opened her eyes and spoke in a language she'd never learned. Où suis-je, qui êtes-vous? French. Perfect French. Isabel Thornfield, who had never been to France, never studied the language, never spoken anything but English, was speaking French. Byron leaned forward. Isabel, can you hear me? Do you know where you are? Her eyes tracked his movement, but didn't seem to recognize him. Empty of recognition. Margaret, Isabel's voice was rough. Margaret, où est-ce que j'ai peur? Margaret, Isabel's sister, dead 37 years. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Byron pulled up records on his tablet. Margaret Thornfield, Isabel's twin, died June 1987, lung cancer, age 30. He showed Elena an addendum she'd missed. Margaret lived in Paris 1985 to 1986, enrolled in Sorbonne language program before cancer diagnosis. But how is that in cellular memory? Elena whispered. Isabel, or whoever was looking through Isabel's eyes, looked down at her hands. Old hands, liver-spotted, thin-skinned. She screamed, not pain, horror. Pure existential terror. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Ce ne sont pas mes mains, qu'avez-vous fait? The police officer stepped forward. Someone explain what's happening. Byron didn't look away from Isabel. We brought her back, but we brought back the wrong person. The police didn't arrest them immediately, partially because the situation was unprecedented, partially because Isabel Margaret, whoever she was technically alive and technically needed medical attention. And partially because the officer in charge, a woman named Detective Sarah Morrison, had the presence of mind to recognize that this was beyond standard protocol. Nobody moves, Morrison said. Nobody touches anything. Medical team is on the way. She looked at the monitors, at Isabel convulsing on the table, screaming in French, pulling at IV lines. Is she in pain? She's terrified, Byron said. She thinks she's 30 years old. She thinks it's 1987. She thinks she's Margaret, not Isabel. Is she I don't know. The paramedics arrived, stabilized Isabel, sedated her enough to stop the screaming, but not enough to stop consciousness. They needed to monitor brain function, needed to see if this was temporary psychosis or permanent damage. They transported her to Massachusetts General Hospital under police escort. Byron, Elena, and Clarissa were separated, taken to different interrogation rooms, questioned for hours. Elena sat across from Morrison in a gray room that smelled like old coffee and institutional anxiety. Walk me through it, Morrison said. From the beginning. Elena did, all of it. Meeting Dorian, meeting Byron, subject 17, Isabel's consent, the serum, the 6 hours, the revival. Morrison took notes, didn't interrupt. When Elena finished, she was quiet for a long time. You're 18. Yes. You built the AI model that predicted this outcome. I built a model. It didn't predict this. It predicted 12.7% chance of meaningful revival. It didn't predict resurrection of the wrong consciousness. Do you believe that's what happened? That you brought back Isabel's dead sister? Elena thought about that. I believe something came back that thinks it's Margaret. Whether that's Margaret or a hallucination or a glitch in neural firing, I don't know, but it's real to her. The terror is real. Morrison closed her notebook. Your father's here, with a lawyer. Very expensive lawyer. I didn't ask him to come. He came anyway. That's what parents do. She stood. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take a deal. Put charges if you agree to full cooperation cessation of related research, public testimony, and psychological evaluation. Dr. Kensington is being charged. Your sister is being charged with illegal distribution of medical imagery. You get to walk away. That's not fair. I was part of this. You're 18, easily influenced by an authority figure. He's 32, a professor. The law sees a difference. Elena wanted to refuse, wanted to stand with Byron, but she was so tired. What about Isabel? The hospital is keeping her sedated until we can reach her daughter, until we can figure out what she is, who she is, if she's competent to make her own medical decisions. Morrison opened the door. Take the deal, Elena. Learn from this. Don't waste your intelligence on guilt. The scandal had metastasized into national news, international news. Harvard professor resurrects woman as wrong person. I'm not my sister, the horror of failed revival. Twin consciousnesses, science or psychosis. Clarissa's footage, despite being taken down from Vimeo, had been downloaded, re-uploaded, analyzed, memed, and debated endlessly. She'd been expelled from NYU, faced lawsuits from Meredith Thornfield, lost her scholarship. But she'd also been offered documentary deals. Netflix wanted her story, HBO wanted the footage. She'd become famous for betrayal. She'd chosen to disappear instead, left New York. Last Elena heard, she was working at a restaurant in Portland, Maine, avoiding cameras, avoiding her own face in search results. Byron had pled guilty to unauthorized medical experimentation, 18 months in minimum security. His lawyer had negotiated down from 10 years by arguing that Isabel's consent was genuine, that no profit motive existed, that the intention was research, not harm. The judge had been unmoved. Intention doesn't matter when the outcome is horror. Elena had testified for the prosecution against Byron, not by choice, subpoenaed, required. She'd sat in the witness stand and answered questions about the AI model, the probability calculations the moment Isabel opened her eyes and spoke French. She'd tried not to look at Byron, failed. His expression was neutral. Understanding. He didn't blame her. That somehow made it worse. Dorian had sent one email after the scandal broke. I'm sorry I didn't warn you better. Harriet was right about everything. Elena hadn't responded. Now it was November. Elena was at MIT. Delayed start, but they'd let her enroll. The scandal had actually helped universities like controversy when it came with intelligence. She was famous in a terrible way. The girl who'd helped resurrect the dead and created trauma instead. She'd started writing. Not her novel that felt too ambitious, too raw. A new project. Memoir. Documentation. The Modern Prometheus, a Confession by Elena Woolstone. She wrote about every decision, every failure, every moment of doubt. She included Margaret's testimony, the full recording from that first terrible conversation. She included Byron's notes. Subject 17's data. Everything. Random House had bought it. $200,000 advance. The publisher had wanted sensationalism. Elena gave them honesty. Dry. Clinical. Unflinching. They'd published it anyway because controversy sold. It had sold 40,000 copies in the first week. And now the publicity tour. Elena sat across from Anderson Cooper, cameras rolling, knowing millions of people would watch her explain how she'd helped kill someone twice. How has this year changed you? Cooper asked. It's aged me. I feel older than I am. I made choices that hurt someone. That doesn't wash off. Do you regret it? Regret is too simple. I regret the outcome. I don't regret trying, which probably makes me exactly the kind of person who shouldn't be trusted. The interview continued for 45 minutes. Elena answered honestly. Refused to perform remorse she didn't fully feel or confidence she'd lost. When it ended, the publicist said, not great for sales, but fine. Elena didn't care about sales. Outside protesters held signs. Science without ethics equals murder. Elena Woolstone equals Frankenstein. She walked past them, didn't engage, carried the weight. Her phone buzzed. Email from Byron. He had limited internet access. Weekly emails through his lawyer. He saw the interview. Too honest, probably. But honest. Subject 17 died last week. Lived 5 months post-revival. Longer than the failed subjects. Shorter than we hoped. The autopsy showed neurological degradation. Slow but steady. The revival set a timer we couldn't see. 73% function wasn't stable. It was a slide towards zero. Margaret didn't just die because she wanted to. She was dying anyway. The revival was temporary. We didn't give her life. We gave her hours of terror before death claimed her again. I'm sorry. Keep writing. Keep documenting. It's the only good that came from this. Bio and Elena read it twice. Subject 17 was dead. Everything died, even the things they'd brought back. She went to Mount Auburn Cemetery, to her mother's grave, sat on the grass. Mom, Isabel came back. Sort of. Not as herself, as her dead sister. It lasted 6 months. Then she died again. For real this time. The wind moved through trees. Spring coming on. I don't know what that proves. That resurrection is possible. That consciousness can persist in cellular memory. Or just that we're very good at creating horror when we try to eliminate it. Elena pulled out an envelope. The one Isabel had given her. Don't open unless the experiment fails. She opened it. Inside a letter. Isabel's handwriting. Elena, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Again. Or I came back wrong. Or I'm trapped in something between life and death and someone merciful let me go. Whatever happened, don't blame yourself. I chose this. Knowing the risks. Knowing it would probably fail. Here's what I haven't told anyone. I have a box at home. In it, a pair of eyeglasses. Victorian era. Belonged to my great-grandmother. They don't have arms. They fall off constantly. Useless. But she kept them because they were a gift from her sister. My great-great-aunt Margaret, the first Margaret in our family. If I come back whole, give me those glasses. Remind me that some things we keep not because they work, but because they're from people we loved. If I don't come back or come back wrong, keep them yourself. Remember that trying to see clearly often means accepting blurred vision. The glasses are in my desk. Top drawer. Meredith has the key. Thank you for trying. Thank you for being honest about failure. That's rarer than success. Isabel Elena folded the letter, called Meredith Thornfield. They'd spoken once since the trial. Brief, painful. Meredith had been civil but cold. This is Elena. Silence. Then I know. Your mother left something for me, eyeglasses, Victorian, in her desk. More silence. Why would she do that? Because she knew this might fail, and she wanted me to remember why we tried anyway. My mother died twice because of you. I know. She died terrified, screaming, believing she was someone else. Do you know what that's like to watch? No, I don't. I'm sorry. Meredith's voice cracked. The worst part, I visited her at the hospital after they sedated her, before she died the second time, and she looked at me like a stranger. My own mother didn't recognize me, didn't know me. I lost her twice. Once to your experiment, once to whatever came back. Elena didn't have words. But, Meredith continued, she left you something, so I'll honor that. The glasses are yours, I'll mail them. Meredith, don't apologize again. Don't explain again. Just take what she wanted you to have and do something good with it. Something that isn't horror. She hung up. 2 weeks later, a package arrived, small, carefully wrapped, inside the glasses, round lenses, no arms, Victorian era. And a note from Meredith. My mother believed in impossible things, in resurrection, in second chances, in you. I don't know if she was right, but I know she chose this. And I have to respect her choice, even if I hate what it cost. These glasses don't work. They never worked. But maybe that's the point. Elena put them on. The world blurred. The prescription was wrong. The frames slipped immediately. She adjusted them. They slipped again. 400 years these designs persisted. She kept them. Elena sat in the MIT chapel. Eero Saarinen's masterpiece. Light entering through a single skylight reflecting off metal sculpture, filtered through imperfect glass embedded in brick. Beauty from error. Her thesis defense was tomorrow. Failed code when bugs become features. About programming errors that became essential functions. About how the history of technology was really a history of productive failure. About medieval inventions and modern innovations and the thin line between catastrophe and breakthrough. About Subject 17. About Margaret. About Isabel. About her mother. Someone sat 2 rows back. Meredith Thornfield. I've been looking for you, Meredith said. Elena turned. Why, Bohem? Because something happened, something you need to know about. Meredith moved to Elena's row. Sat. A cryonics facility in Arizona. They've been working with Byron's data, the serum formula. They contacted me last month, Asked if I'd consider donating my mother's body for long-term preservation. Said maybe in 50 years someone will solve what you couldn't. What did you say? I said yes, because Mom was right. The mattress won't get better unless someone's willing to be the uncomfortable straw. Meredith pulled out her phone, showed Elena an email. Ms. Thornfield, we successfully revived a test subject using Dr. Kensington's serum with modifications. Subject was deceased 72 hours. Returned with 89% neurological function. Conscious, aware, correct identity, stable for 6 months now with no degradation. We'd like to discuss using your mother's remains for similar trial. With your consent and legal clearance. Elena read it twice. This is real. I don't know, maybe. Maybe they're lying. Maybe they want publicity. But if there's a chance, even a small one, that Mom's choice leads to this, then maybe it was worth it. Meredith, your mother died twice in terror. Nothing makes that worth it. I know, but she chose it anyway. And I'm choosing to honor that choice by letting her contribute one more time. Meredith stood. I don't forgive you, Elena. I'm not there yet. But I understand you. And maybe understanding is the step before forgiveness. Or maybe it's just its own thing. She left. Elena sat alone in the chapel, pulled out her phone. Texted Byron's lawyer. Can you pass a message to Byron? Tell him they're still trying. Tell him. Subject 17's data is being used. Tell him it might work. The response came hours later. Byron says thank you, and says to tell you failure is only final if we stop trying. Elena Wollstone stood in a laboratory that looked nothing like Byron's basement. Clean, official, university sanctioned. Every piece of equipment properly documented. She wasn't leading research, she was consulting. PhD in bioethics from MIT. Published extensively on technology and mortality. Known professionally as the Frankenstein girl. If you were going to fail publicly, you might as well own it. Her phone rang, Meredith Thornfield. They spoke monthly now, not friends, but connected. Elena, it happened. What happened? They brought her back. My mother, the cryonics lab, new technique, neural restoration. They called me this morning. Elena felt her chest tighten. And it worked. She's alive, conscious, knows who she is, knows who I am, no Margaret, no confusion. Just Mom. Meredith, that's miraculous, terrifying, both. Yes, I'm seeing her tomorrow. She asked for you, said she had something to tell you about medieval inventions. Elena closed her eyes. I'll be there. She hung up, walked to the window, looked out at Boston. Somewhere in a cryonics facility, Isabel Thornfield was alive again. Maybe it would work this time. Or maybe this was just a more sophisticated alarm clock. Either way, Elena would witness it, document it, ask hard questions, because that was her inheritance. Not brilliance, not success, but the knowledge of how to fail responsibly. She picked up her bag, inside the Victorian glasses, still there, still slipping. She left the lab, drove to Mount Auburn Cemetery, to her mother's grave, sat on the grass. Mom, I think I finally understand. Creation is cursed because it demands everything, and in return gives you maybe nothing. Or maybe something that outlives you but doesn't remember you. Or maybe just the knowledge that you tried. The wind moved through trees. Isabel came back. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe resurrection becomes another medieval invention, terrible at first, refined over centuries, eventually just another tool. Or maybe it fails again, and we learn, and we try again. Elena stood, left the glasses on the headstone. I'm keeping the curse, Mom, the obsession, but I'm adding humility, the knowledge of how badly it can fail, the wisdom to count the cat. She drove to the cryonics facility, to witness resurrection again, to document failure or success, to carry forward the inheritance of glass and buttons and alarm clocks and all the medieval inventions that failed their way into immortality. Because that's what survivors did. They tried, they failed. They documented, they tried again. And somewhere in that cycle between catastrophe and breakthrough, they found meaning. Not in succeeding, in trying honestly, in failing responsibly, in leaving the mattress slightly less uncomfortable for whoever came next. That was legacy. That was enough. Cryonics Facility, Arizona. Isabel Thornfield sat in a recovery room, looking at hands that were simultaneously hers and not hers. 67 years old when she died. 67 years old when she woke up. But different. Revived. Restored. Elena entered quietly. Isabel looked up, smiled. The girl who calculated my odds at 12.7%. I beat them. You did. How long was I dead? 6 years, give or take. Feels like 6 minutes and also like forever. Isabel gestured to the chair beside her bed. Sit. Tell me what I missed. Elena told her everything. The first revival, Margaret, the second death, the scandal, Byron's imprisonment, Clarissa's exile, the book, the testimony. Isabel listened without interrupting. When Elena finished, she was quiet for a long time. I'm sorry you went through that. That my choice caused that. Your choice gave us data, taught us what not to do, led to this, to you actually back. Am I though actually back? Isabel looked at her hands again. I remember dying the first time, the sedative, the darkness, and then nothing, until now. Did I exist during those 6 years? Was I somewhere or was I just off? I don't know. Neither do I, and that terrifies me more than dying did. She smiled sadly. I wrote you a letter before. Did you get it? I did, the glasses. I kept them. Good, you understood then. That failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the foundation. A nurse entered, checked Isabel's vitals, adjusted an IV drip. When they were alone again, Isabel said, I have 6 months, maybe a year. That's what they're telling me. The revival process works, but it doesn't reverse the cancer. Just pauses it, so I'm alive. For now, until I'm not again. I'm sorry. Don't be. I got to wake up. Got to see my daughter. Got to know that trying was worth it. That's more than most people get. She reached for Elena's hand. Third time's the charm. Or maybe fourth. Keep trying, keep documenting, keep being honest about failure. Because one day, maybe not soon, maybe not in our lifetimes, someone will figure out how to do this right. How to bring people back whole. And when they do, they'll build on our mistakes. Our failures. Our experiments. Failures are only final if we stop learning from them. Isabel closed her eyes, tired but at peace. Tell Byron thank you. Tell him Subject 17 bought us this. Tell him that rats and humans aren't so different. We all just want a little more time. Elena stayed until Isabel fell asleep. Then she left the facility, drove back to Boston, went to the MIT chapel, sat in light filtered through imperfect glass, pulled out her phone, started writing. Not memoir this time. History. The Glass Inheritance, a study of productive failure. Chapter 1, Why Things That Don't Work Still Matter. Medieval toothpaste destroyed enamel. We still brush our teeth. Medieval eyeglasses fell off constantly. We still wear glasses. Medieval alarm clocks burned houses down. We still use alarms. These inventions survived not because they worked well, but because humans needed them enough to tolerate failure while searching for improvement. Resurrection is the newest medieval invention. It works poorly, costs enormously, fails often. But we'll keep trying, because some questions are worth answering even when the answer is not yet. Even when the cost is measured in lives. Even when success looks like 6 more months instead of forever. This is the inheritance. Not perfection, not immortality, just the stubborn, reckless, beautiful human refusal to accept limits. Even when the limits are right, Elena saved the file, looked up through the glass cathedral ceiling, light entering through broken patterns, creating beauty from error, just as it had for 75 years, just as it would for centuries more. Some things survived not by being perfect, but by being honest about what they cost. Byron Kensington was released from prison in 2026. He now teaches bioethics at Boston University. Dorian Ashford's self-healing glass was acquired by Apple in 2027. Clarissa Claremont's footage was acquired by the Smithsonian Museum of Medical History. She declined payment, works as a carpenter in Maine. Meredith Thornfield became a leading advocate for cryonics regulation and death with dignity legislation. Elena Wollstone is director of ethics at the MIT Media Lab. Still carries Victorian eyeglasses that don't work. The modern Prometheus, a confession, has been translated into 41 languages. Isabel Thornfield's second resurrection lasted 8 months. She died peacefully in 2031, having contributed crucial data to consciousness preservation research. Her last words, fourth time's the charm, keep trying. Subject 17's preserved remains are on display at the Smithsonian labeled The First Successful Revival 2024 Temporary Life, Permanent Lesson. Margaret Thornfield's testimony is required reading in every bioethics program in North America. And somewhere in Boston, in a chapel made of imperfect glass light, still enters through broken patterns and creates beauty from error, just as it always has, just as it always will. Because some things survive not by being perfect, but by being honest about what they cost.